So I'm recording.
Sure, that's fine.
Okay, so really quick. You're 49. It's been 30 years that you've been... How did you find me?
I guess I'm starting with... Actually, I do know. When I started with HCG, and I entered that in YouTube, and you came up with the one with... you were trying to explain leptin and how HCG works.
Yes,
that's... The red shirt one, right?
Yep. That one's the one that I described the science that I wrote about in Weight Loss Apocalypse.
Yeah. And it started from there, and then I started listening to some of your other ones. And I really do not understand how to eat to hunger at all. I don't know what that means.
Yeah, well, it's very difficult if you've been dieting for 30 years. Dieting or on or off, right? Because you're either...
Yeah, it's 30 years. I either know how to eat, like to pig out, and not care at all, or I know how to eat salads and protein and deprive myself all day long. That's
controlled. Yeah.
My two methods.
Yep. Sounds about normal for the people who are in the diet industry. You're either super controlled by the diet, or you have no sense of control, and you're compensating for being controlled. So it's like big pendulum swings between I need to control myself. I'm going to go to the diet industry as my rescuer. They're going to help me. They're going to make me feel better. And you get this weird sense of control. But ultimately, it's not realistic. It's only something people can do temporarily without going crazy or isolating themselves as a human. And so it's,
Yeah, I can remember being 19 and being about 117 pounds for a 5'7", large framed woman.
117 pounds at 5'7"?
Yep.
That's tiny.
It was, I thought it looked great. Nobody else did. But I got there from doing days on end of diet iced tea and nothing else. And then I'd find myself at 7-Eleven just buying hordes of crap to pig out on. And that would last like a day or two.
Yeah, that's a binge.
And then I'd get back to normal, quote unquote, and go back to like depriving myself and feeling really bad about myself and guilt.
Yeah, I love that you use the word normal for you're starving.
Yeah, exactly, and that's why I put it in quotes. Because I know it's crazy. I absolutely know that.
Yeah, that's intellectual knowledge, though.
Yeah.
But emotionally, it feels safe. It's a weird thing. It feels like I need it. It's like what keeps me safe. It feels like something like a weapon you need or a shield of sorts, you know.
Yeah, that's why T2 is so easy.
Oh, for sure. Well, because you're also losing weight, so you got to keep that in mind. If you're not losing weight, it's not so easy.
Right.
But the actual parameters of it are black and white. It's easy to follow when it goes.
Oh my God, that's so familiar.
Oh, totally. There's no gray. It's on or off the protocol. So yeah, that's a benefit to that need to control. It's just people. Why would you do that if there's no benefit? Right. And so when you're using body image as a benefit, you're walking on a tightrope around how it feels emotionally. You know, of course, we can look at it in a vacuum and say, well, yeah, this is simple. Your hunger is being minimized by the HCG. The food takes very little for that hunger to be removed. It's actually quite miraculous how...
And it actually works.
Well, everything works. It's just a matter of working fast enough for your emotional demands. You know, when someone says it works, it's like that is such a relative statement around your emotional issues. Everything works. Everything out there works. It's really, does it work enough for your emotional needs in relation to the strain that the deprivation puts on your psyche? And it's relative deprivation. Oh my God, did I confuse you? I didn't confuse myself, but I'm hearing myself going, oh, okay, she's going to have to rewind this and listen to that 3 times. And, you know,
I actually understand that part very well.
Yeah.
The deprivation part, I totally get it.
Yeah, so it works in relation to being deprived. So it's like you're getting rapid results. So the feelings of deprivation are like, it's almost like they're actually being beat. You know, like, whoa, I'm losing weight. So then that feeling of deprivation is not, it's like normally your deprivation is there and you're chasing it, you know.
Right.
Whereas the deprivation is on the back end of the protocol for most people. until it gets highly emotional. And then it doesn't even matter. You could lose weight and feel deprived because it's pretty radical in terms of the removal it requires to follow it. So I don't know if you've listened to any of the YouTube videos where I talk about the HCG protocol done as a diet and how dangerous that is. And what defines it as a diet. You know, it's the same protocol, same food restrictions, but when I talk about the HCG diet, I'm talking about someone who is using the protocol to fulfill an emotional desire for body image. So it's an emotional compensation. So I'm going to use the protocol so I can lose this weight so I can feel better about who I am. That's total psychological. The illusion of health. People do it all the time. I just need to be healthier, even though they're really not unhealthy. So they're feeding an emotional want and need with it. And so essentially it's an abuse. Yeah. Do you know how many people I've worked with who did not use it for their emotional self-centeredism?
Oh, that's all I'm using.
Correct. I'm like, you're pretty much normal. So how many people do you think I've actually worked with who actually aren't using it for that reason? I have
no idea.
Very little. The only people I do it with are people who've worked with me for months to get there. Then we talk about the protocol, because otherwise if you're using it to gratify something that is an emotional lacking, okay, you're emotionally lacking something and you think that the weight loss is going to make it neutral or better. What happens when you come off of the HCG and transition?
Here I am.
Well, fear. Yes, you're free. That's exactly what happens because you don't want to lose what you think you gained. And so how that manifests is in pressure to continue to restrict without the HCG. And so all of a sudden you can't relax like you were on the protocol. When you're on the very low calorie protocol, you can relax because you can rely on the protocol to quote unquote work, if using your words, right? It's working. So you don't have to really stress or strain. You just follow the protocol.
I've been struggling to lose these pounds for the last 3-4 years.
Okay, I'm saying 30 years. It's been 30 years now, not 3.
Well,
just
30
FYI.
Yes, it really has been.
Okay, so keep that in mind.
It's to the point of like where I've been stressed out over it. Like really, like I'm ready to do anything at this point. It's been about a good 3 years.
Yeah, that tells me you're on like it's desperate. So now you're just desperate. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's gotten worse. Yeah.
It's just a little bit more, right, because none of my usual tricks have been working anymore.
Yeah.
And so what is my usual trick? Not eating for a few days.
Well, yeah, you're
spitting it out, right? So you don't.
Oh, that's bulimia.
Actual food.
Yeah, that's a form of
I
bulimia.
can't get myself to vomit, which is a good thing.
Yeah, but chewing and spitting that's a sign.
Just a bit, yeah.
Yeah, that just tells me how desperate you are. It's just hard. It gives me it's like, it's so impulsive and it's like you think you're tricking. I mean, that tells me how important thinness is to you. Yeah. Thin supremacy.
Do not hide that part at all.
Well, yeah, you're not gonna, yeah. Well.
It's definitely right up there on like my top 10, my top 3.
Yeah, that sucks.
Yeah, and I've listened to a lot of your videos, and I really do not know how to drill into hell.
Yeah, well, that's hard because you're using this to survive.
That's what you said, which is like you have to be willing to put weight on.
You do. Yeah, well, you don't have to know how. It's an emotional understanding. You would have to go into that emotionally. I know some people understand it intellectually. They go, oh, of course, if I didn't care about my weight, then all this eating crap would melt away. It just goes, I wouldn't have to do all this. The insanity, I wouldn't have this obsession. My life would be so free. I would be real again. I mean, there's so many layers of benefit to letting it go. The problem is you're so attached to the thinner ideology, like religion. You don't know anything other than that, like a religious indoctrination. And so to let it go would mean you have to start over with 0, and it'll feel like loss. Like you're basically saying I have to quit. Yep. You know,
Yeah.
so, and you have to go into those judgments about it and criticisms about it that are absolute brainwashing, like religious indoctrination. You have to really question what you think is a sin.
Right.
You know, but if you have never questioned those things, you've just internalized them as godly, sacred truths.
Yeah.
You know?
That is where I'm at.
Yeah, and that makes it's almost impossible if you're not willing to turn and face those beliefs and question them.
Yeah.
What that feels like is vulnerability. Because what if the answer is completely different than what you've gambled on? What if you've been wrong this whole time? What if this is what you have to face is the guilt of wasting 30 years of life?
Sure.
I know. And that's what's going to come up. And you have to and then you have to dismantle the guilt. How do you do that?
I don't know, because you know what I said to my husband a few nights ago? I said, oh my God, I feel so guilty for having that. He's like, what do you mean you feel guilty? You know? And it's like to him it's something foreign. He's like, what do you mean you feel guilty for eating?
I know. See, he's like, what's wrong with you? Like you're killing someone? Like you stole something? But that's how it feels to a thin supremacist who's been indoctrinated by diet dogma. You've been brainwashed to believe it's all dangerous, it's all bad, and if you eat it, you're a piece of shit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, hence my guilt. And I said, well, most women feel like that. He goes, like who?
Most thin supremacists. So that's really important. You need to start seeing that. It's like think of it as racism. If your daughter married a black person, you would feel bad. That's racism.
Right.
If you didn't have racism, would you feel bad? No. So you need to see this as, well, it's not all women. It's all thin supremacists. Because not all women are thin supremacists. Not all women buy into this baggage. It's actually a very... I truly believe that this is a generational thing, and it keeps on passing down to the next generation. It's misogyny, right? We can look at this and go, this is direct misogyny and narcissism that has been widespread throughout the culture. It was started after World War II, big time.
Okay.
Right? And so you're just, it's been handed down to you. You've never questioned it. It was just part of your mother's generation was a huge part of the target around you can't be overweight, but you have to eat everything on your plate because they were part of the Depression. So they have these.
To the fact that we're from another country. Yeah.
Oh, where are you from?
Yeah, that too.
Where are you from?
Sicily. So add to it, you have to eat this. Keep eating.
My mother-in-law is Sicilian.
Oh, really?
Yes, but she's second generation. Yeah, I do. Oh my God, I have so many memes I've sent her. Have you seen the meme with the grandma that has and they photoshopped it, but it's this table where she's sitting down and it's like a table fed for 50 people.
No.
Oh my God, it's amazing. If I can find it, I'll send it to you. It is the funniest thing ever. You can't just have smooth peanut butter. It has to be crunchy peanut butter, the skippy peanut butter. Then you got it because everybody needs their specific peanut butter. Then there's got to be this type of bread because someone so likes this bread. I mean, it's the detail in it all. It's amazing.
Okay.
Anyways, but yeah, I totally get it.
Yeah. And so it's, food culture was pretty big.
Yeah, it's big. It's actually big in human nature. Food culture is. It's a human nature thing. I'm the same way. Everybody's the same way. It's just how it manifests and what we promote and how important it is. And that actually is beneficial. That's a benefit to you, and it's a benefit to your digestive system. There's a lot of benefit to having that. So the problem is it's a direct, it's like a threat to thin supremacy. So there's two things warring on each other, And the problem, too, is when you believe in thin supremacy, you also believe in anorexic lifestyles. And so you're amongst food, you're around food, you're preparing food. Food is love, food is safety, and you're a piece of shit if you participate. So you're not allowed to be human. You need to be a rock.
Correct.
And if you eat, it's not the diet that is the jackass. You are.
Right.
So you've never blamed the diet. You've never blamed that industry. You've never looked at that industry and said, that is inhumane, and it's promoting binge eating. It promotes binge eating.
I'm the one who failed it.
Well,
I'm like, why can't I do this?
Yeah, because you just made my point. Because it's never the diet that sucks. It's never the restrictions that suck. They're godly. That's like the priest at the front of the head saying, it's you that needs to repent, not the actual strictness that's inhumane. The rules that are out of touch, that don't take into account our brains, evolution, connectivity. The fact that, when you eat pleasurably, you're actually digesting the food. Pavlov's dogs, I've been studying him. Have you heard of him before? Pavlov. Okay, so he studied digestion and how the mouth waters and how the gut releases acid and how stress affects that and they found that the idea of pleasure actually stimulates saliva, stimulates the gut, not food. I know, there's so many cool, and this was research was done a century ago. The diet industry isn't talking about that. So under stress, they actually showed, they studied dogs under stress, and their saliva stopped working and their gut stopped producing acid, and there were a lot of different changes, and it actually stopped peristalsis. So the diet industry that is fear-mongering and saying, that's bad, you failed, that's a sin, it's dangerous, how is that impacting you while you're eating it?
Right. I actually heard you do a few videos of that recently,
Yep.
the last few days.
Yeah, well, that's because I'm writing about it right now. It's a killer chapter on survival mode, yeah.
Because I absolutely suffer with that 100% digestive issues.
Yeah. Should we blame it on the food?
Salad doesn't seem to cause a problem, but everything else on the planet does. And I thought about it in a whole new way. I think that's what prompted me to actually finally make an appointment with you. I was like, oh my God, I never even thought about it. All the stress I'm under when I'm doing something bad.
Yeah. Oh, it's huge. It's huge. And your body is, in a way, rejecting the food, and you wonder why it's dumping into the intestines. It's not even digested.
Yep.
It's just like, but they're going to blame it on the food, not their fear-mongering of the food. And the decades of doing this. So it's been a chronic period of time that you've done this to your body. Because you've held on to these belief systems, right?
Oh, yeah.
So it's the belief systems I want you to see.
I never even thought about that. So.
Good. So maybe that might be the opening for you to question the dogma you've just given righteousness. Holy shit.
My rational brain says yes.
Well, that's the beginning. I'll take it. The rational brain, good. Because at least you're starting to think broader. Well, you're starting to look at it from a broader perspective. There's distance now. You're not sucked into it just thinking everything is about you being a piece of shit and that you just can't handle it and that it's and then you're internalizing all that. Internalizing all that in shame. And then what that does is promote even more stringency in what you're doing, which is that's where you become radicalized by it. So you're a religious, radical, thin supremacist over a 30-year period of time. And has it been working for you? Is it really that healthy? Is it really that beneficial? Would you recommend my 17-year-old daughter start dieting? Should we get her on a diet?
You know what? Funny you say that because I have a daughter who's 17, about to turn 18 soon. And I have really tried so hard over the years to not discuss her weight.
Oh, well, it has nothing to do with her weight.
No.
It's your weight.
Yeah, no. But it's like I don't discuss her weight. I don't let her know when I'm actually dieting or anything like that. I do everything I can to hide that from her. And then she'll say to me, like, Mom, you look thinner. I'm like, oh, okay. And I walk away, like not feeding into it because I do not want to pass this on.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, you probably have without even knowing it.
Probably. But
I know. You just have to get over it. But good for you for being very consciously aware of how terrible it is.
I don't want her to do what I've done. So.
Yeah, well, if she's already noticing, Mom, you're looking thinner, and praising it, she's already bought in. And it could be from just culture and You know, there's so much of that there's a huge, huge, huge business in thin supremacy. I mean, it's massive. So the media,
years ago.
yeah, yeah. So the thing is, too, if you recover from this, then your language is going to start changing. You're going to start pointing things out. You're going to help her see that and go, wow, did you just see that commercial? Oh, my God. You know, that's thin supremacy. You know, it's like that's racism.
Right.
That is. You're right. Holy shit, I never even caught that. You know, it's similar. You know, there's going to be a generation who will come out. It will be very easy for them to not be indoctrinated by it because it's my generation and my daughter's generation and your daughter's generation are the ones that are going to go, this has big, big repercussions. There's so much physical problems that have stemmed from this over the course of 5 decades, 6 decades, 7 decades that people have been doing this. You know, one thing that I remember when I was working at the clinic in Minnesota when I did that YouTube video and I started these YouTube videos is we noticed that almost everybody, it was like such a high percentage of people coming in said they all had gut issues, thyroid issues. It was like so predictable. Thyroid, gut,
I've got that too.
the leaky gut stuff. People would come in, just insane degrees and to me, it was all these people were educated, seeking knowledge, wanting to know. They weren't ignorant they were highly adapted to dieting. They carried a lot of shame. They carried a lot of guilt with food. They were constantly trying to fix what they were doing. So you would think by their effort that they wouldn't have any of these issues. Right? Except for they all had these issues. Yeah. And, you know,
I've got the thyroid issue to go with it.
Yeah. So the thyroid and the adrenals, the fatigue, all of those things to me are like, well, all of those are the organs that are directly related to fight or flight. They're really, really important in fight or flight.
Right.
And they're direct anxiety, ADD. I mean, just all of this. It's like, okay, let's take a step back here and look at the impact that the belief system has, which is thinner people are superior, which the outcome is fatter people are inferior and should be ashamed of themselves. Like hide, you need to hide, you piece of shit. Then how that promotes the diet industry, which is shaming and fear-mongering food, which impacts how people respond to food, not just physiologically at the gut and the hypothalamic level, and metabolically as well, because if you're in fear around eating a food, you're going to have high blood sugar prior to even eating. I'm just like, okay, this is a fight or flight problem. But now we're dealing with it at a chronic level, right? So you're coming to me 30 years of this, 30 years. Of course you're going to have digestive problems. Yes. You're going to have digestive problems if you do it 1 year. You're going to have digestive problems the one time that you eat when you're in fight or flight because you're not geared to eating at that point. The problem is that the diet is actually threatening you because of that primal, animal need to eat. Have I talked to you? Did you watch any of those YouTube videos? Have you seen it? Are you in the Patreon account?
No.
Okay, so I have a lot of videos where I discuss Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Have you ever heard of Maslow's hierarchy of needs?
No.
Oh my God. So I'm going to give you a little lesson here. So this is also going to be in the book. So when we talk about survival mode, we're really talking about, when we perceive threat or when there is actual threat. The brain responds, then the body responds to either fight, attack, flee, hide, or blend into your background. So we have these primitive reactions to perceived and actual threat. So when you see a bear, you're either going to pause and complete and total paralysis, right? Or you're going to run, okay? Or there's a bunch of different mechanisms in place here. Like shrinking or expanding, making yourself look bigger. Anyways, the brain and the organs of the body are part of that reaction. And the whole point of fight or flight That's what that's called. Their survival mode is to prevent you from dying. So if you perceive something as threatening, the body responds to protect, to prevent, to fix, right? And so your whole mind becomes tunnel vision towards those things, okay? Maslow is a scientist who studied human behavior and psychology. And he looked at us fundamentally from a primitive animal perspective. That, what he found is that when humans are lacking the basic fundamental needs to survive, they're going to have predictable psychological behavioral compensations. So he found that we prioritize psychologically the most important needs to survive. So the most important, what do you think the most important need is to survive?
In that moment?
No, at all times.
Oh God, I have no clue.
It's very, well, because it's so close in front of your face. Food and water. So think of it this way. It'll come to you instinctively. If we had something cataclysmic happen, okay, where everything is destroyed, you're alive somehow. What's the first thing you're going to think about besides getting out of danger?
I guess food and water.
You got it. And so our brain is wired to basically shut everything out until we feel safe with food and water. So it's like that. It's a priority. We have to get priority number 1 situated before we can get to priority number 2. So it takes the brain and puts it into tunnel vision on that first priority. So when food, water, it's the physiological need. So if you Google Maslow's hierarchy of needs, you're going to see a pyramid. And it has been updated with newer research, but for the most part, it's been pretty much accepted. As his theory is like, yeah, this is pretty fundamental. And evolutionary psychology follows it. And so because we're animals, and if we look at how we evolved, it was living off the land. So our main priority psychologically in our consciousness is to hone in on the basic bare necessities of need if they are being threatened. Fundamentally, the number 1 priority of our psychological well-being is to secure and to make safe food and water and air. Air quality would be huge, but we don't have those issues, do we? You clearly don't have a water obsession, do you?
Well, I did for a little bit. Yeah, the other day. That's way too much.
Oh, Jesus Christ, of course. But that's like dieting. That was probably for weight loss. So that brings me back to where the issue really is. But you're clearly being triggered to the foundation of psychological need. Your primitive survival mode is being triggered. The most fundamental primitive survival mode. Okay, so the pyramid is the foundation is food and water. Okay, the second need, if you go back to that kind of cataclysm that I was describing, is then you would want shelter, right? So environmental safety is secondary. So food, water, environmental security. So home, safety from the elements, proper clothing to protect you, healthcare, those are secondary. Okay, the third important, it's not as important as food. It's not as important as your house, is your tribe, because we're pack animals. So through, millennia of evolution, we have grown to psychologically prioritize relationships because you're more likely to stay alive with other people.
Okay.
So having a tribe or a pack is really, really important to our psychological well-being. Feeling that we have something, that we are wanted, feeling that we have something to give. Those are all very primitive emotions that dogs have, that other pack animals have. They want to feel that they have a place, that they belong. So a lot of times it's described as belonging, that third hierarchy of need. So, and then it goes up to a fourth, which is when those lower 3 are secure. Now we can focus on creativity and self-esteem and exploration, right? Those are more like once your survival needs are met, now we are more open-minded. We are more lenient. We're less myopic. We don't have the same obsessive compulsiveness. When you get out of those lower three, you actually have grace, lenience. You're more open-minded, curious. What the outcome is, you're more lenient on the outcome. You don't need the outcome to be a certain way, this or that way, because you're not surviving on it. So in other words, you're out of survival mode. Okay. So the lower three.
I can relate to that. Yeah, I can totally relate.
In probably certain areas.
In my head, I'm still at like 1. Right?
Well, of course you are still. Your 1 has been threatened for over 30 years.
Sure.
And but you securing number 1 threatens number 3. Because you don't feel like there's belonging here. Because you need to be thin. So that's the problem, is your third hierarchy of need is actually unmet. And you think that being thinner will meet it. And what you're doing to be thinner actually triggers the foundation of your psychological well-being through starvation. And that's why it's hard to maintain. Because you'll always lose out to the fundamental needs to survive, which is to feel safe with food. You don't feel safe with food. Yeah, and even during the point, you have to. It is beyond your control. You're correct. Especially when you're not necessarily the goal in mind. Even if you are thinner, it doesn't really fulfill that need. It's an illusion that it will. It doesn't actually fulfill it. It's like chasing a mirage, because no one really gives a shit if you're thinner. You think you will be given, and that's the narcissism in there. The self-preservation is, well, I will feel better when I'm thinner. Well, no, you actually don't. You just feel held hostage now in your starvation cage, and you're miserable. So it really didn't give you what you thought it was going to give you. So it becomes like you're going to blow up. You know, so you're basically messing with your fundamental survival mechanisms. So you have been in survival mode for the most part of 30 years.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
I have to agree. Other than pregnancy periods, yeah.
Well, and the thing with pregnancy is that might be your one time you don't feel like you have to be thin, so you're not triggering the third one, and you're not trying to restrict, so you actually have a moment of ease.
Well, you know what? As life would show you what's wrong, right? But first, I developed toxemia with my pregnancy, so it's like 15 pounds every 2 days. But, there was no way around that one. And so it was actually like a little bit of state, right? It was just like, it figures, right? It's, and so, I got up to probably past 220 from about 124 at that point. And that, it was okay while it was good. I didn't like it, but I dealt with it. But then afterwards, oh my God. I definitely went through an emotional time to get it off.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, and the pressure because you want to prove to people you're not that person.
Yeah.
I know, it's so ego-driven. Very much ego and survival-driven. It's this third hierarchy of need trying to fulfill itself. But it's only because what you believe. It's not necessarily true. It's, like I said, it's a mirage. But it's not to you because you believe in that. Again, it's no different than, being a radical religionist. Someone who's in radical religion truly believes without it they're terrible people. So their basic condition is terrible.
Yeah.
So your basic body is terrible to you.
Everything that you're saying, I absolutely, totally understand. I am not, confused in what you're saying. I actually agree 100% with what you're saying. I don't know how I would ever actually be able to act on it.
Yeah. Well, it requires some grace. I mean, you'd have to really go into it with grace. And so in the humility. So there's a humility. It'd be like, how do I admit failure and come out of the closet? So I know I've done wrong. I know that what I'm doing is harmful. I know I don't want to do it anymore. But how do I admit it and then tell people and then stop? Yeah. Well, this is where it gets complicated because the survival mind thinks it needs to be thin to survive. So that's where the wanting of the thinness has to go away.
know how to get that. Well, let me change that. I understand that. I don't think I know how to do that at all.
Well, of course you don't. If you did, we wouldn't be talking.
We wouldn't be talking.
Of course. And if I knew exactly what to say right now, I would say it. But I don't, other than it's a process. It's your work, not mine. You know, all I do is say, so it's a matter of you going into wanting recovery versus wanting thinness. So what it is, if you want to put it simply, and again, this is just giving you, you know, bullet points here, how to get there. That's not my job. That's yours, right? I can guide that, but I can't make you do it.
Yeah.
I've gotten people to this point a bazillion times, and you know what? I'd have to say about 20% turn away. They can't do it. Or they could. They refuse because they are too ignorant. They're too arrogant. There's an arrogance and narcissism that they refuse to surrender because they believe inferiority is death. So I am going to say something that's going to hurt, but you are absolutely suffering from a degree of narcissism. Narcissism is, when a lot of people hear that, they think I'm not that jackass. I'm not a mean person. I don't hurt people. But this is a narcissistic survival mechanism you're holding on to. So you're holding on to something like racism. That's what it is.
Totally.
Yeah.
That you said that because what other reason would I have?
I know. A lot of people get offended. They're like, I'm not a narcissist. I'm like, yeah. Yeah.
Or my belt from when I was 26 years old. So it's quite serious.
Yeah, and it's really about your beliefs. And imagine how hard it would be for someone who's been, again, I like to parallel this to religion, to be a certain way and to think a certain way just because it was told to them and they just believed it and then promoted it. It's a promoted thing. To question it and to surrender it. What would that feel like? Well, you could if you just thought for a little bit. You know what I mean? You have to go into that experience and it'll come to you. It's like, oh, they would feel embarrassed. Yes, because they promoted their narcissistic belief system. They promoted it. Once you promote something, then if you surrender it, it means it was wrong. You weren't as awesome as you said you were. You're not the best. You're not the king of the hill. It's like you have to go into demotion to allow it to happen. So in a way, this is like allowing yourself to be demoted. That's why it feels hard and almost impossible. I know for me, it felt impossible. It felt like there's no alternative. I have no alternative. I know for me, if someone had said, you know, Robin, you just need to be fat, I would have said, okay, bye-bye now. That's not an option. They don't get it. That would kill me. I would lose all. I mean, I didn't know this consciously until I actually recovered, but unconsciously what was driving this is the fact that it is not, there's no alternative. I am thin. I am fit. That is my identity. So what they're telling me to be is not me.
Right.
You know, but.
Well, fortunately, you found a way to break that cycle and still manage to be thin.
Oh, no. I don't care about my body.
No, I understand that. I totally get it.
I don't believe in thin supremacy, so it's not fortunate that I'm the way I am. It's irrelevant. It's fortunate to anorexics when they see me, and thin supremacists with narcissism. They think I'm fortunate.
Yeah, well, that's exactly the word I use.
Yeah, I know. It's just spewing out. It's just the shit's coming out. It's just like, yes, there we are. There's you are. It's like saying,
I am not in denial. Totally. I just,
no, you're not. I can hear it. It's just, you need the mirror needs to come up. Like, it's like saying what you just said to me is like saying, thank God you're white, Robin. You're so lucky.
True.
You know what? You're not racist, but you know what? You're fortunate you're white. Well.
Yeah, right. When you say it that way, sure.
No, that's identical to what you're saying. And we could say, sure, I live in a thin supremacist culture. Sure. I don't believe that shit. You know, sure, we live in a racist country. I live in a part of the country that is less racist, however, but I did live in the South. And let me tell you, I did not. It sucked. It sucked. And I'm not racist.
Right.
Because people thought I was racist. And I'm not. Right? So it's the same thing. So when you see that, it's going to help you. It's going to get you to start to question, right? So, or to look at it from the heart. You've started looking at it from the mind. So when you're like, my mind is getting it. There's so much truth in that. I agree with everything you're saying. Yes, yes, yes. But your heart hasn't looked at it yet. The problem with the heart looking at it is it would mean you need to change. And what does that mean you have to face? Well, that's the end goal, but what would you have to face to get this?
I don't know.
Gaining weight. And permanently gaining weight. It's not just gaining weight, it's permanently. Because you've been okay gaining weight at different times, but it's never been permanently accepting. Correct. And because you're giving yourself freedom to eat before you go back into the cage, you know.
Right.
So...
It's like a
correct. Yeah. Long drawn out, and you could say, fuck it, I don't care, but you know what? We both know you actually do care. You're just giving yourself some grace temporarily from the shame because you know you will fix it. So the question is, what would it feel like if you do not fix it permanently, forever? What would bubble up? So you'd have to face that with your heart as if it's real. And that is scary. And that's what you're probably like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. This is scary. I don't know if I can do it. That part is where you haven't gone yet. So you have to go there for you to get the answers to how to do it. You know, you're like, but I don't know how to do it. Well, you're going to have to go there with an open heart, not with your eyes shut, not like la, 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 plugging your ears. You have to go into the realness of that and the permanence of it. The permanence is a key word here. A lot of people do it, but they do it temporarily. I'll be willing to gain weight. Oh my God, they get this freedom, but then they relapse, right? But they never really recovered because to them it was just a temporary test. And it's amazing what they get out of it. Just that alone is amazing. So in and of itself, opening yourself up to it, even just for temporary, gives people an awareness there is a way out. Holy shit, there is a way to get out of this. This is not like I'm not doomed. This isn't genetic. This isn't a disease. This is a choice. It's just a matter of, can I accept permanently being inferior? So that's the antidote to narcissism. Accepting permanent inferiority. Now, there's a really important key word there. It's accepting. Accepting means that you're okay with it. There's a willingness there. Some people get caught on that because they are accepting they're getting fat, but they haven't accepted it. They're pissed off. They're feeling sorry for themselves. Is that really accepting it? No. No. You got it. So there's parts of this process that you learn as you go through it. You know, like me, I'm sitting here saying, this is what you're going to have to do. And, blah, 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 and you're intellectually going, oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. But what is it going to feel like to do it? Shit. Because I'm asking you to face your nightmare. You've been running from this nightmare for 30 years.
Yeah, I know. And,
it would be so much easier just to keep on running from it.
You know, about 4 years ago, I finally stopped smoking, which was, as you've heard from many smokers, a great tool to keep your weight in check.
Yes. Yes, many anorexics use that, yes. Yeah. Oh my God, if I could diagnose someone right now with anorexia, I would diagnose you.
My husband and I went away maybe a few days later, and I remember having a meltdown on our trip about how fat I was getting within days.
Oh, that sucks.
Like literally just crying, like I could just see the weight starting to come on, and just being like, oh my God, like there's something like absolutely wrong with me. That's probably the first time I ever actually realized how bad it was. I haven't gone back to smoking, which is the good news. But
well, what do you think is worse for you, dieting or smoking?
Oh, smoking, and I recognize it. I wouldn't go back to it.
I'm sorry, I'm going to argue with that. No, that's not true. Dieting is really bad for you. Bad.
You know,
Look at your gut.
you know what?
Look at your...
I know that if I went back to smoking, my weight management would be easier on me. I don't know if it's psychological enough, but I'm not willing.
You're missing my point.
Okay, then I must have been talking.
I'm making a point. Which one's worse for your health, dieting or smoking?
I thought it was smoking, but apparently it's not.
Not in my opinion. Because smoking, obviously, we can say you're using it as a tool. I mean, obviously, there's grades of smoking. I have friends that smoke just randomly when they drink. They don't smoke all day long. I mean, think of the grade of when someone says, I used to smoke, the grade of what that is. Okay?
Right.
Clearly, it's not black and white. The grade of dieting can be said the same way. Right? You're clearly anorexic to me. Okay? You would, in order to equate the anorexia and the poison, you realize that anorexia and this way of thinking has the highest morbidity rate. You know what that means? The most disease and death of all mental illness. Did you know that?
No.
Okay, so all of your physical ailments, your gut issues, your anxiety, don't forget the depression, okay, dieting, body image. Okay, we could say someone who smokes casually is in better health than you. Just think about that for a second. Just a thought. I'm not suggesting you start smoking. I'm just...
No, I do that.
I want you to...
You were telling me to go back to it.
No, I'm just like, it's so funny to me how people pick and choose what they think is unhealthy when you are clearly extremely unhealthy from your desires to be thin. You've never seen it because of your radicalism in your narcissistic anorexia. Never.
Yeah.
But smoking, oh my God. Oh my God, I shouldn't drink coffee. It's just like, okay. You know, we don't see it.
Right.
Anyways, besides the point. So you had an experience where you started gaining weight and had a meltdown over weight gain. It was probably 5 pounds. Somewhere.
I don't know, but it's pretty ugly.
Yeah, your reaction to it sounds like that. Yeah. So, you know, imagine in that moment if you had faced the answers of why is it this ugly? Should this be this ugly? Is this something I should be feeling this bad about? Why do I feel this bad about it? So to go there, you have to face it open-mindedly. Problem is, if you believe in the dogma, you can't be open-minded about this. You're not questioning your reaction. That's the reaction everybody should have.
That's exactly what I do.
Yeah, so it runs you. So
Correct me often that most women don't feel guilty. Most women don't cry over pounds.
well, anorexics do, yes. So, but you just never considered yourself that extreme. A lot of people don't. Because when they think of anorexia, they think of that emaciated teenage girl sitting in her parents' basement on her Instagram taking pictures of her hip bones.
Yeah. That's usually my way to know where I am.
Your hip bones.
Kind of stick out, right?
You are so well. The fact that you're 49 is awesome because you have made it this long. Okay, so I'm just going to say congrats for living as long as you have.
Thank you.
Because this is a very, very dangerous way of being. However, that's a lot of misery. Holy shit, you've been living in misery for a long time. I mean, this is dark. This is not easy. I think people too, when people talk about stuff like this, they don't really get how miserable this is. It's not like, oh, I just don't feel confident.
Fun, like, oh yeah, it's not fun. That's not the right word. Like, this is okay.
No, this is terrible. The isolation it can bring you, the social panic, the dark sense of shame and depression associated to your size. If you are on a diet, the anxiety that comes about when you're around food, shame and guilt every time you eat, I mean, you're just living in toxic space. You're living in a toxic space. If you're thinner, you're actually going into narcissism, your superiority. You're high as a flipping kite on yourself.
Yeah.
You know, that in and of itself is disgusting. That's like saying, I am so special, I'm so white. I'm whiter than you. Ha!
Right. Silly.
It is so juvenile, but that's what that is. Thin.
Totally.
You know, it'd be like, again, one of the parallels I use is with foot binding. It's like someone who, from China, had the smallest feet feeling better than you because your feet are bigger. More valuable. They're competing on whose foot is smaller. It's disgusting. It's all an illusion in their head, right? They're playing a game in their head thinking that it's true and real, but it's all just a mirage. You know, and you're stuck in that. And it is like being held hostage by a belief system or a cult belief following.
Right.
You know, if you...
It's definitely feels like that.
Yeah, it does. But because it's... I've been helping people for a little bit here.
Yeah.
This isn't my first rodeo.
You haven't heard anything new today.
No, it just sucks. I always feel when I work with someone, I never know where they're at on their binge eating side or anorexic side. You're absolutely on the anorexic side of it. Just because
I feel like I'm on the other side of it.
I know, but you're not. Trust me. You might have the binge. You might be in the position where you just can't control it anymore. So you're fatigued on the anorexia. So you're fatiguing. The fact that you spit and chewed, that's bulimic. I mean, chewed and spit. I'm here. A lot of what you're saying to me is, it's all similar. It's all similar. But well, let me ask you this. If I were to become, like, let's just say your fairy godmother, and I'm going to give you a wish, or excuse me, I'm going to give you the freedom, a choice. I'm giving you a choice. I'm going to use my little wand, and you can stay this fat permanently, and you'll never have to fix it. Forever. Okay.
I'm sorry, my husband was just talking to me. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
You know what he just said to me? Tell her you got me feeling so bad. You think I'm sad. You got me feeling so bad.
Well, tell him that not to trust you because you're a thin supremacist.
I'm affecting him with my
Your thin supremacy. You need to call it thin supremacy. Like a white supremacist, you're a thin supremacist.
Yeah, I'm sorry. What were you asking me? I'm sorry about that.
Are you talking to me?
Yeah.
I don't even know. Oh, if I was your fairy godmother and I said to you, okay, Maria, I'm going to give you the freedom to never give a shit about your weight again. It doesn't matter. It's irrelevant, your size and weight. It's not your purpose in this life. You're never supposed to fixate on it. The body's going to be what it is. And whether you're overweight or thin, it's irrelevant. It is no longer what you are to fixate, focus on, or to be the center of your focus. So whatever it is, it's going to be that. And you need to know that you are given a free pass. Regardless of your weight, you're getting a free pass into heaven. You could be fat, you're still going to get in. No one cares. Okay? It's irrelevant to your purpose here on this planet. I will give you that freedom if you so want it. Would you take it?
I don't know.
Oh, you're anorexic. That right there. Someone who's a binge eater would have said, yes, I'll take it.
Yeah, I don't think I'm there.
No, you're on the anorexic side. For sure. There's no doubt about it. There's no doubt about it. Again, a binge eater would have said, that's like winning the lottery, Robin. I'll take it. You'd rather live in hell with your anorexia. This is where anorexia is like so narcissistic because you think you have something and you don't want to give it up.
Yeah, that's defining it well. I think I have something and I don't want to give it up. Yeah.
Even though you're miserable, unhappy, you have no life. You know
what, Robin? I've actually stopped
Karma's a bitch, isn't it?
Painfully, like, aware to me. Ever since I got, like, an auxiliary cord, and that's all.
Yeah.
Like, I don't even listen to music anymore. I'm always trying to
Well.
figure out, how can I maintain this? How do I keep this?
Well, it must be so amazing. It must be so amazing that it's like so important to you. It must be that amazing.
It's almost like horrible.
I know. I don't feel sorry for you. I hate to break that to you. It's like, yeah, karma's a bitch. You want that. You get it. This is what you get. You're a thin supremacist. You're like anorexic narcissism. And of course you don't get your freedom to be alive anymore. You're dead. You're like hollow. You get nothing. You'd rather that. How are you going to recover from this?
I have no idea.
Yes, you do. What are you going to have to give up?
Obviously, my desire.
Yep. Yeah, you do. Because you have to see that I'd rather have my freedom and be a real person with a soul that has an actual heart that beats and colors that illuminate, and I have actual life beating through me. I'd rather that than a hollow, lifeless, dark, cold body. For the illusion of narcissistic supremacy. I won, but did you really win? Really?
No.
Yeah, so you need to go into that. The problem with the narcissism, and you might not have connected these dots, is it feels like death to let it go.
Yeah, I think I started off with saying I'm not ready to throw in the towel. I guess death is like a little bit more appropriate.
Yeah, that's what it feels like.
It is hard. I don't know how to do that. I could have a temporary lapse, quote unquote, and like just say the F with it.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, a day later, I'm like back to no, I'm not giving in yet. I'm not going to throw in the towel.
Well, the way that I start with people is to go into opening up to talk about why, like what's underneath there. What are you afraid of? Is it about friends? Like, are you afraid that they'll find out that you're a fraud?
Yeah.
I want you to know that that's going to come up again, and you will probably say yes. There is a social aspect to this.
Well, it has to do.
So,
Well, maybe I'm not seeing the question for what it is. Maybe I'm just, I don't know. Maybe I haven't delved that deep.
okay, so let's delve into that. That's my point, is delve into the deep, the realness, the truth of it. Like, what would happen if you were, how much do you weigh right now?
135.
And you're 5'7". What is your fear of being, like, if you had to be 165?
Oh my God.
Okay, I want to go there then. So let's go there. So if I said, you want freedom, just go into this space. Okay, go delve into it. Get into this. Your first reaction, the superficial response, is going to be your narcissistic response, right? That's not the one we're looking for. That one is like, no, duh, that's your answer. Like, oh my God, no. Okay, now let's go into it. Go into the truth of this. If you had to be 165 pounds for whatever reason, and it's permanent, what's the first thing that comes up? Keep in mind, it's permanent. I know your mind's going to go, I'm going to fix it somehow. Permanent.
So permanently 165?
Ish. Yeah. Plus or minus 10.
It's like awful.
On a scale of 1 to 10, what is that?
It's about a 10.
Okay. So in terms of catastrophe, physical hardship, it's a 10. So tell me this. What would it be like if you got in a car wreck and you became a paraplegic? What would you where you're wheelchair bound forever, you'll never use your legs ever again? What's that on a scale of 1 to 10?
Oh, that's definitely a 10.
Okay, so gaining 30 pounds is a 10. Being a paraplegic.
Oh my God.
Is it 10? We're going to keep on going. So what would happen if you, let's just say you got in a cooking accident and let's just say there's grease got on your shirt, splattered on you, and you got burns, like oil burns, and you caught on fire and big fire in it. You know, have you ever seen someone who's had burns on their face?
Yeah.
Because they're fat. They have a lot of fat in your face and it melts. Your nose will melt. Your ears will melt. That cartilage it's really flammable. And you'll never look the same again.
Yeah, that's a 10 for sure.
Okay, so burn victim. Which one's worse, paraplegic or burn victim?
I'd have to say they're kind of the same.
For you?
Well, no, I'd have to say paraplegic would be worse.
Okay. So what would the burn victim then be? Like disfigurement, like
17.
Okay.
That's the number that my gut's feeling.
Okay. Yeah, and there's no right or wrong answer. It's just like what, you know, when you really dig deep into it and the truth comes forward, right? Because now the truth is coming up. So what about, I want you to imagine that for some reason, again, some freak accident, you get cancer in your eyes. They have to take your eyeballs out. You'll never have eyes again. Or sight. So you're blind, basically, your whole life and have to wear dark glasses.
That's the 7, 8 on given paraplegic.
So being blind is an 8. What's paraplegic?
10.
Okay, how about losing your hearing? So you'll never hear again. So with blindness, you'll never see the sky. You'll never see your children. You'll never see grandchildren. You'll never see a movie. You'll never see the beach. Right?
Yeah.
How about deaf? Never hearing. You're never hearing music. Never hearing anybody.
Maybe 6.
Okay, so you're more adaptive to never hearing again. Okay. What about...
I know what you're going to ask me.
Well, no, we're trying to get an awareness really of what's really a catastrophe, you know, as you go through all of this. What is gaining 30 pounds?
Yeah, I know what the rational side of it is.
What's the rational answer? Because don't you agree your other answers are rational?
Yeah, the rational side of it is probably like a 3.
It's a 0. It does nothing. You have no limits. So a 3 would be like, it is limiting. I mean, you put deafness at 6 and gaining 30 pounds at a 3. Let's get real again. That's still way distorted. This is called cognitive distortion. You're super distorted around your idea of what hardship is. So gaining 30 pounds, what's that doing? What's it really doing that's so hard? What's it really taking away physically? It does nothing. Make sense?
Oh, totally.
So is it really a 3? You being 165 at 5'7"? Or would you say you're still catastrophizing that?
Totally. I am absolutely doing that.
Yeah, imagine if you had horrible eyesight. You have eyesight, but you have to wear special goggles to be able to see. Where's that?
If I was still able to see but needed a special goggle?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's right there with being 30.
Yeah, like,
pounds.
Hold on. You think those are equal?
I know it sounds nice.
No, you need to start questioning.
I'm trying to not say, like, putting 30 pounds on is like 6. I'm really trying to.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's how you feel. So here, because you need to become undistorted about it. So a lot of times it's like, holy shit, I just said that gaining 30 pounds is the same as being a paraplegic. You heard it when you did it.
Initially, yeah.
Good.
That was my first answer.
Yeah. Yeah. So you could see it. You feel it. And you're like, well, no wonder I'm fucked up.
Yeah.
No wonder I'm acting the way I am. Because I'm treating...
I totally get it.
Yeah. You're treating your weight as if it is Like, you can't even live. You can't live. But yet,
like I said earlier, I can convince myself for a day that this is insane.
Yeah.
But then the next day I'm right back at it.
Yeah. Well, here's how this works. You have to convince yourself, because I won't do it. It's too intense. I should charge you $300 an hour to do that. No, you can't. You know what I'm saying? It's like going to a church and asking people to, or going to some place and asking people to convince me to do it. Yeah, I won't do that. You go convince yourself. When you're ready to do this, then we'll talk. There's nothing I can say that can convince you to do this. Look at your own misery and then ask, can I do this? How miserable am I? You know, how miserable is having an eating disorder like anorexia? Would you recommend this to anybody?
No.
If you were to rate on a scale of 1 to 10 how this has impacted your life, how would you rate it?
It would be pretty high up.
Yeah, well, because you're treating it as if it's high up. So I know for me, it's worth suicide. I would if it came back, I would just kill myself. It's not even worth living. It's that bad.
Right.
There's no doubts about that in my mind, in my awareness of what it was like to live there. I'm listening to you and it literally is cringing. You're in hell. You're in purgatory. And you want to stay. You want someone to convince you to leave. You're more afraid of 30 pounds than being a paraplegic. That's how bad it is.
I don't know what it's like to be in a paraplegic
You know what? Have some foresight. It would be a lot better than your situation. There might be physical limits, but you have a soul. You could be yourself. I want you to imagine what your life would be like if you actually lived through a traumatic event that left you a paraplegic, how that would change this issue.
Sure.
So I'm asking you to think about that now. Like, go into that. I get in my car, I make a right turn, and a motorcycle slams into my car. The motorcyclist dies. I get a terrible spine injury that I will never recover from, but at least I have my upper body. Now tell me how important it is you stay thin.
It's not.
No, it becomes ridiculous. It's like, why would you even care? Who gives a shit? It's so juvenile. It's not just juvenile. It's so like, what the fuck? There's no life. Why would you limit yourself moving forward to something so crazy? Think about that. If you got in a car wreck to where you were left a paraplegic, would you really care and continue to obsess over your body image? What would happen to your identity?
Well, I guess with my whole narcissistic side, I guess I would care.
Well, it would be tested, don't you think?
Totally.
Just think about it. Just go there. I want you to really think about this realistically. What would change in your life? Besides your physical situation, you'd have ramps to your home. Like, how important would thin supremacy be to you at that point?
At that point, I don't believe it would.
I would agree with you. Why? Why would it just...
Because at that point, I got bigger fish to fry, right?
Well, yeah, because it's so, don't you agree? Let's go into what really does this thin supremacy serve? What are you doing it for?
I don't know. I don't know at what point.
That was a surface answer. Just go deeper. Go deeper. It is there. You're going to learn that these questions, they require you go into them. If you give a surface answer, it's not going to do anything. I don't know. Well, yes, of course you don't know because you've never thought about it. I'm asking you to think about it right now. Let's think about it. What is my thinness serving? Well, it's going to just take a minute. What are you getting out of the thinness? Why is it that important? Because it's symbolism. It really isn't important, but it is to something symbolic to you. And that's why if you got in a car wreck and became a paraplegic, it would be literally meaningless. It would become a zero, which would actually improve your life dramatically. Because you could be real again. You could actually be real. You can't right now. You have to be fake. It's a facade. It's like the role. I have to play a role. I have to be this role, right? So you're role playing. And so the question I'm asking you is, what is this role doing for you? Because it is a role. It's like playing a part in a play. You just bought the character. You think, I am the character. If you get hit by a car and become a paraplegic, you don't fit the character play anymore.
I don't know. Never thought about what role this plays.
So that's going to be something you need to contemplate. Right? Understanding that will be really helpful for you. Because it is a role.
I'm actually writing it down. What
Cool.
role does this play in my life?
Yeah, what is the meaning of this? Because that's ultimately what you're holding on to. You're holding on to that. And that's what you're having a hard time letting go of. Again, it would be easier for you to adapt to being a paraplegic, to going blind. Those would instantly change your paradigm. And the benefit would be that you would no longer be held to this shit. You'd be like, thank God I lost my eyesight. Holy shit. My life was pathetic. And I don't have to do it anymore. I can just be myself. I can actually connect with people at the heart versus the superficial skin layer. Right? It would change a lot how you would vacation. You connect with the actual experience rather than the illusion of what you want in your head. The fantasy, right? Which is a symptom of the narcissism, right? People who are in this state of survival mode are constantly living in a fantasy. You know, any deviation feels catastrophic, right? Because you're putting your neutrality or your norm, that's why I loved a little while ago when you said my normal, which is your anorexia. That's the fantasy realm of what you think is normal. And then everything is hyper criticized in relation to that. So for example, you gained on that vacation, catastrophe. That would make sense, right? Because you're not really in it for the vacation. You're in it for the fantasy of it, which requires you have this body. It's like, again, that's a role play. I'm that, So it's like becoming a character in a play. And you said, I am that character. And you're just playing the character, not realizing you lost yourself. You're in the thin suit. I'm the thin suit person. That's what this means. Yeah, and what does that mean? There's symbolism you've attached to that thin girl without actually telling the story of the misery that girl's in. It's horrible. It's a nightmare. It's a nightmare. She's in a nightmare. In a cage. Being held hostage and starved so that she can feel good about herself. That's the role, right? So you have to really ask what you get out of it that makes it seem worthwhile. Because it's not really intrinsically worthwhile. It's a seeming worth. It's why it's like feeling like you're chasing a mirage, right? It seems good, but in reality, you're miserable because you're chasing.
I've had these few experiences that are a little troubling to me. I've spent 30 years suppressing cannot figure it out in my life. I only know when I'm starving, ready to eat my own hand off, or I only know when I'm full. I don't know that in between. And there's been a few occasions where somebody would say to me, "Oh my God, you're going to eat that?" And it's almost like, I guess I made the wrong choice. Or it's like the sense of guilt and shame that comes with it because I'm caving into something openly.
Sinning. You're such a sinner.
I know, and I guess somewhere along the way, I've learned to deprive myself even further.
Yeah, to prove yourself.
Yeah, and I find that when something like that happens, it without a doubt makes me tighten up even more on what I'm eating.
Yeah, it's like challenging. Was that a challenge? Are you saying?
Kind of. Yeah, it's like, and also like making me feel, well, I made myself feel terrible. I should have just said, yeah, I'm eating this. What's the problem? But instead, shame and guilt comes.
Well, that's because you're seeing it as a criticism. Your perception is, again, it comes from that narcissism. Inferiority, you're a loser, you have no self-control. Those are the belief systems. That's the set of it's a system, it's a program that says that, right? And that person is going to sit there and do the same thing. They clearly bought the same program. You're going to eat that.
Why does it always come from somebody who's much heavier than me? Why doesn't it come from somebody who's thinner? Why does it come from somebody who's heavier?
Well, most thin supremacists are heavier. Most food zealots, most people who are obsessive about what they're eating are the ones that have the most shame about their weight. You're a perfect example. You're just functioning in your anorexia with some bulimic tendencies. You know, it's just, I don't know, because I have met some of the most radical food zealots who are extremely thin with all sorts of problems physically, right? They'll never tell you those things. And I've met the same personality in a much bigger body. I don't know. It just could be that you're just extremely anorexic and normal people next to you seem bigger. You're 135 and 5'7". And you probably think you're overweight.
I would like to, yeah, I would like to be a little bit less. I'm married to a number, clearly.
That's the fantasy.
Yeah, I'm definitely married to a number.
That's the illusion you're chasing. I'm going to get that. And that number is your safety. It's your security. It's when you feel like I've made it. It's the destination.
Right.
Yeah. The problem with that is that you haven't included that you have to maintain this misery in your dieting to keep it. So it's not a destination. It's a mirage that keeps on shifting. There is no you don't get to that number and sit.
Yeah. And like I was saying, I don't know how to eat any other way. I don't know how to follow a hunger scale.
Well, you're not going to be able to with this type of mentality. The hunger scale is too moderate. It's too open-minded. It's too gray. It will never work for you. I know that's not what you wanted to hear.
I feel like if I had eaten to hunger, I cheated.
The problem with what you're just saying is eating to hunger is something that comes very easy with people who are not thin supremacists and have any anxiety or pretentiousness about their weight. If you have an issue with your weight, so if you go back and read Weight Loss Apocalypse, you're going to hear me say you got to be able to do this without your weight being a part of it. Many times. It was very repetitive. Your weight is really important to you. So much so that it's catastrophized if you become overweight, right? If you're 165. How is eating to hunger going to help you? Because it's such a open-minded, lenient, non-radical approach, right? So the issue with hunger is that it becomes very easy to follow and very easy to listen to when you're not in fight or flight, when you're not in survival mode. But your belief system is trapping you in it. So I've never seen someone with this belief system capable of even recognizing hunger, because you're too afraid it won't work. So even if you wanted to, your fear of gaining weight is going to distort it. So you're going to have anxiety while you eat, which makes it very difficult. So the idea that you came to me in mind is that if I can eat to hunger, I should be able to keep this weight off. Well, yeah, that thought is assuming you're rational and not in fight or flight, and you don't believe in thin supremacy, and you're relaxed about what happens to your weight.
Yeah, I totally.
You see that?
Totally am not that person yet.
Correct. So if you have this type of emphasis on your weight and attachments to your weight psychologically, to thinness, it's very, very difficult to implement the hunger scout, because you're too biased. It'll be too strained, too pressurized psychologically.
You know, when I was talking to my husband about this, he said it's so easy. I'm like, for you.
Yeah. For him, for me, for all the other clients I've worked with who have recovered first, it's like natural. It's like going pee when you need to go pee. That's how it feels.
I haven't a clue. Like I said to him and you earlier, I only know how to starve myself or pig out.
Or to compensate. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know how to be in that range.
Yeah. Well, that range is appropriate to discuss and to prepare you for when you have undistorted your narcissistic thin supremacy. When you've recovered from that, the conversation about eating to hunger is going to come very naturally, and will actually be a relevant part of relearning how to eat. The only way to give you that opportunity, however, is for you to undo this radicalism.
God, I got so much work ahead of me.
But can you see that?
My rational brain absolutely.
Okay, good.
Understands.
Good.
I'm trying to understand, and you've been very helpful in this, listening to your videos, and I totally get it. I see a whole different side to this. That for years I thought there's something wrong with me because I can't manage my weight, right? So I have to resort to all this crazy stuff.
You never questioned your thinness.
What was that?
You never questioned what you're trying to hold your body to.
No, not at all. To me, it's the norm. It's what you're supposed to do. I'm
Yeah.
not throwing in the towel. I'm too young to just say the hell with it all. And I think I've been struggling more with this since listening to you.
Good.
Because now all of a sudden there's a whole new perspective that I've never thought about.
Yeah,
and it was always, well, women are supposed to do this, right? We're supposed to manage ourselves. And when I see somebody who doesn't, in my head I'm like, my God, she's just totally threw in the towel.
And then she's inferior, or you've shamed her, or you think there's something wrong with her.
Yeah.
Yes, there's the narcissism once again.
Without a doubt. I never considered myself narcissistic, but clearly, yeah.
Well, you're holding on to a narcissistic belief system. And so what do you get when you hold on to a belief system that's narcissistic in nature?
I can't let it go.
Well, you become that. So I'm trying to tell you, it's not true. Yeah, because I know in my heart that your heart is not narcissistic. You are not inherently that toxic and poisonous psychologically. However, you are holding on to something toxic and poisonous. Again, you're like, I try to withhold this from my child. That's great news. Because that tells me,
yeah, I don't want her to go.
Your heart means well. Your belief system, however, is really bad in terms of toxic psychological harm, right? Your belief in thin supremacy and you holding yourself to it has caused a lot of baggage, shame, guilt, heartache, psychological illness. But you only have it because you're holding on to a belief that is ill. Thin supremacy is illness. Racism is illness. Anybody who holds on to it is going to have that illness.
Right.
You're living in hell. You live in hell.
This was about 19 or 20 when I first started embarking on this, and I was down to about 116. And I remember one night, my dad waiting for me to get home and basically dragging me into the kitchen and making me eat. I do recall that. And, you know, he was like a little freaked out, right?
Of course.
Where I was going. And
they probably didn't see it until they saw it.
yeah,
And they went, there's a problem here. But prior to that, they were probably like, good for you. We're so proud of you. And then until they went, oh, shit, what have we done?
Yeah, and then I hit a point of like too far on the other side.
Which was what?
Like basically my lean body mass is about 108 pounds, so I don't know how I even got to 116. You know.
You lose muscle. But yeah.
And I'm thinking I look great, and here's my dad dragging me to the kitchen.
Well, yeah, you took pride in it. That's the narcissism.
Oh,
I won.
Talk about how thin I used to be.
I'm winning. I'm the most important person, and I'm better than you, and you're the least important. I'm thinner than her, and yeah, that's just. But that's, you know, sounds like someone that's a juvenile. It sounds like a child that is like that's actually trying to survive and has low self-esteem. Wouldn't you agree if you heard that from an 18-year-old? Be like, oh shit, she's got low self-esteem. She needs to see a therapist. That girl has got some problems. But you realize that that's generational. Back then, that's what was normal. We're far more aware of that today, that you would be shocked to hear that coming out of an 18-year-old's mouth.
Totally.
But not in 1980.
No.
That was the boom of narcissism. Boom.
Sure.
Yeah, so keep that in mind. You were normal. You're stuck there. You're stuck. You're literally stuck living in the past, living in that narcissistic moment. It's kind of like if you watched Napoleon Dynamite with Uncle Rico, who's so stuck on his high school days. That's you. I was so thin, 1982. I was like wearing my workout outfit. It was hot.
Sure.
Did a little cocaine here and there. I was like super popular.
Sure. It was so perfect. It's like work all day, go home, meet your friends, go work out at the gym, come home, shower, go grab a little bite to eat, then go dancing all night, and my pants were falling off.
And I was hot. I was the coolest person there, and all the fat girls were jealous.
Totally.
I can't wait for you to hear this.
Like I said, I understand from a certain perspective of like how wacky this is. Otherwise, I would have never.
Okay, here's what's gonna have to. You're gonna have to grow up. That's gonna suck because for some reason you think that juvenile way of being was the end-all be-all of winning. And it is causing a lot of harm right now as an adult. Yeah. And I'm pretty sure you wouldn't do the same thing knowing what you know now.
No. The same advice I'm trying to keep my daughter from.
So you would have to update your hard drive. I don't know if you've heard me say that before. The way I describe it is your hard drive is circa 1982 narcissism. Your inner wisdom is 2018 now, in the now. The inner wisdom is basically being shut down by the narcissistic 18-year-old.
Yeah.
Just saying. So you're going to have to let that die and update your hard drive so you can actually evolve spiritually. This is a spiritual problem.
I know we're running over time, but I wanted to say this because I do think there's hope for me at some point.
Of course there is. I wouldn't.
Right before I started this BTG, this is the first time I've gone to like this extreme of, well, not really, but this level of different system. I remember the words in my head. I'm so sick of being like this. I just want to get down to my weight and be done with talking about this all the time about how fat I am.
Oh, yeah. Well,
I remember that so clearly that I was like,
I'm done.
Talk about my start HCG and get back to my normal.
Yep, and then I can move on. Remember when I just said to you a little bit ago, you think this is a destination that you can relax once you get there. So maybe what you're going to learn this time around, because it is a cycle, you need to see it as a loop, is this time around you think the loop is going to stop when you're thin. That's actually where it starts.
Yeah.
And so what will happen is you're going to be thin, and then you're going to find out that what you do to stay thin is what's promoting the overconsumption. And then you're going to gain the weight back. And then you're going to get to where you hate the weight gain. And then you're going to say, I just need to be thin again. And then you're going to do another loop. I remember the moment I saw that, again, it was like, oh, this is never ending. It never stops. There is no destination. It's a mirage. It's a mirage. So what if you knew it was a mirage, that it was not real? It doesn't exist. You will not be thin. It doesn't exist. You cannot get there. It is not a destination. It is permanently, the rest of your life is going to be like this. How would you feel about that?
Yeah, I know it sounds silly, but really horrible.
It doesn't sound silly. I told you what my solution was. What was my solution? Suicide. I'd rather.
I don't care anymore to be at that point.
I'd rather die. That's not a way to live. You can't live that way. It's super demonic. It's very, very satanic, dark, disgust, horrible. It's a terrible place that you're living in. Okay? So when you see that, what will change about your body image? Knowing that if you have to reach that number and that you'll never come out of this, what happens to that number?
I don't know.
You let it go. You're holding on to it because you still believe that destination exists. So the first step, I think, at this point for you is to see that the destination does not exist. It will never exist. You cannot escape this. Permanently in this cycle, the one you're like, I'm sick of this, I can't do this anymore. I hate to break it to you, but if you got to be that number, you'll never escape this. And that is the truth. I'm telling you the truth right now. Does it hurt?
I understand.
Well, you have to see it as the truth. You might hear it and go, yeah, but I'm not, it's going to work for me. Well, when do you realize it's not? It's a lie. It never has worked. It never will work. You've been doing this 30 years and you still can't manage it. So I want you to think about this in truth. I am telling you the truth. I am your messenger saying, look, honey, the way you're doing it does not have an end point. It goes in circles. You will never, ever get a break. Ever. So you can be that thin, you're going to gain weight back. And you're going to have to go through this again. And then you're going to gain the weight back. And you're going to go through the same thing over and over and over again.
And that is the loop I'm on.
And it doesn't stop. So you still think it stops. That's what I'm trying to tell you.
You know what? I thought it was going to stop. And now I realize how freaked out I am about going on to phase 3.
And now you see that it goes around in circles here.
Yeah.
Here we go again.
Freaked me out enough that I went back to phase 2.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I hate to break it to you. But if you can see it sooner than later, the sooner you're going to relax around the number that you think you have to feel good about yourself. So that's where we start cracking open the belief system. We start chipping at it and cracking it. At least we got a chip in it. You know, the brainwashing is starting to crack. But it won't crack until you see the illusion. You see that mirage, like there's no way out. I got to get back on phase 2, then I'm going to gain weight again. I mean, I can't get out. You back into a corner thinking that there's a destination when there really is none. There is no destination. And that'll make you sad. Because you'll realize if I need to be that thin, I need to live this way permanently.
Right.
So I have to either accept this way of being permanently, or I surrender that thinner weight permanently because I can't live this way anymore. So you either live this way and accept it, which is a benefit, than living this way and being pissed off about it. Right. Or because you know I'm consciously choosing to be, you know, in that hollowness, emptiness, disconnection, isolation, guilt, shame. I'm going to live in that space. Or you surrender your thinness. So now it becomes a choice. It's like I have to make a choice. Either I surrender this or I live in that. Either I face the pain of being fatter or I live in the misery of fixing it. So that's where you're at. So what did you want to do? What are your plans? What's your goals here talking to me?
I was hoping you were going to speak sentence.
I can't. That's the one thing I can't do.
I understand that.
You have to do it for yourself. That's the thing. I can't do that part. I refuse. Unless you want to pay me twice as much. Then I'll sit here and yell at you and beat sense. But it's just, I don't want to do it. It's like a soul leech. Someone just sucking on my soul, and I don't want to do that. It's not my job. You know, this is where it takes you. It's your problem. And it's a choice. So, I'm just a guide. I can't make you do anything. And you know that. You know that intuitively. I'm assuming it's like someone can give you good direction. And if it doesn't serve what you want, you won't do it.